Matthew.
No.
We're had.
Cameron McCready, Chair of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association.
Jesse Buss.
Laura, Don, and John.
Don Robertson.
Fairway.
All right, other than Jonathan, it appears we're all here, so if you would please go to mute. First order of business is approval of the June 30th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion or is there a question? One or the other.
I move to approve minutes.
State your name, please.
Troy Bollinger, move to approve the minutes.
Is there a
Sean
second?
Datchler, second.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in, oh, no, we got to go roll call. Sorry, Don, or Kendall, or Denise, whoever has to do it.
I'm voting Kendall.
Good job.
Troy Bollinger,
Aye.
Jeff Sargent. Jeff? Nope. Derek Kugel.
Aye.
Alicia Hammock.
Aye.
Sean Daxler.
Aye.
Andy Crump.
Aye.
Brent Haverkamp.
Aye. And you said that right.
Thank you. Doug Neely.
Aye.
Karen Morey.
Aye. All right. It appears that that was unanimous. Now for the minutes of the July 30th, 2020 regular meeting. Do we have any discussion? Seeing no hands, do we have a motion?
I move the approval.
That's from Doug Neely, I assume.
Yes.
All right, second.
John Datchler, second.
Any further discussion? Seeing no hands, roll call, please.
Troy Bollinger.
Aye.
Jeff Sargent. Derek Kugel.
Aye.
Alicia Hammock.
Aye.
Sean Datchler.
Aye.
Andy Crump.
Aye.
Brent Haverkamp.
Aye.
Doug Neely.
Aye.
Karen Morey.
Aye. All right, so Jesse and Cameron, I believe, are you going to comment under item 5 or under public comment?
This is Jesse. I'd like to go under the Water Board Park item, please.
Cameron?
Oh, during the Water Board Park.
Okay,
Again.
do we have anyone else admitted to the meeting who would be under public comment? Hearing none, we will proceed to general business, which begins with Matthew.
Hey, Karen, thanks so much. I don't know, Kendall, if you want to share screen or I can, or if you can let everyone share their screen and run the risk, I can also do a presentation here. Can everyone hear me, by the way? I just want to.
I can hear you.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
I'm Karen.
I occasionally have problems with this work computer, so that's why I wanted to use that. Awesome. Thanks so much, Kendall. Yeah, so my name is Matthew Weintraub. I'm with our Economic Development Department here in Oregon City, and my role is as the Tourism Program Specialist. So I head up the Travel Oregon City program, so our city's tourism initiative. It's good to see everybody here on on a personal note, I'm a big fan of what you all do. So thank you for this tireless service to parks. I recently wrapped up service on the governor's task force for the outdoors. So I know just how crucial your work is. So thank you very much. I'm here to talk about something a little bit different than recreation or the outdoors. I'm here to talk about the Oregon City, an Oregon City stop on the Oregon Film Trail. And one thing you'll see at the bottom of this screen here is something comes from our Oregon City Tourism Strategic Plan, which one of our imperatives boils down to helping Oregon City develop and plan to promote existing experiences and activate new experiences. So really diversify what we bring, what people can do in Oregon City. So activating new experiences is what we're talking about a little bit. You can go to the next slide there. Great. So we have been in discussions with the Oregon Film Office and Travel Oregon about bringing a stop on the Oregon Film Trail here. And a little bit about the Oregon Film Trail. It's a unique partnership between Oregon Film, Oregon Made Creative Foundation, and a few other what's called regional destination marketing organizations, such as the Oregon Coast or Eastern Oregon Visitor Association, and local DMOs. So we're our local DMO, or a DMO is a destination marketing organization. So that's the entity charged with developing and promoting tourism in a certain market or a certain region. So a little bit more there is that the film trail concept is this idea that we can identify locations around Oregon where iconic or even less iconic films have been shot, or TV shows as well. So if anyone is familiar with the movie The Goonies, right, that's filmed in Astoria. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, there's been filmed in Timberline Lodge, for example, and more recently, the film, or the TV series Grimm, was filmed kind of in Portland and the Portland metro area. So there's some highlights. And it's the idea that people like to experience the locations where they had iconic moments or memories from film, and that inspires travel as well. So we're kind of looking to capitalize on that and also leverage the work of the Film Office in Travel Oregon and others to attract more people to Oregon City to experience what Oregon City has to offer them. So currently the Film Trail has 14 sites around the state, and that'll double in this year, along with expanded digital presence, a map, interactive website, immersive 3D programming. So people at certain sites will actually be able to put on virtual reality goggles, and they will get into the TV show or the film that is at that site. It's kind of cool. And then also a statewide marketing initiative. A little bit about those last two is right now, all DMOs and tourism agencies around the state have been ordered by the governor's office to cease any marketing that directly looks to drive tourism at this point, just because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Right now, we can still share inspirational stories or, let people know that we're still here, but we're not looking to drive tourism. So right now, that statewide marketing initiative initially had looked to roll out in the fall. More than likely will be next calendar year. I'm not necessarily in charge of that at the statewide level, but we can all make inferences about the state of the pandemic and the health of our region. So, and when I talk about film trail, a trail is a concept used in the tourism world, very similar to, an interpretive trail might be when you visit a national park or even a local park. It's a pathway or really a suggested pathway. It might be a highway, for example, right? Linking different points of interest along the way. So that's when we talk about these film trail sites or points of interest. Okay, next slide there. When we talk about a stop on the film trail, it's denoted by, in physical presence, a sign. So there'll be 2 panels with text on each. They'll be mounted or affixed to an existing structure. And they're medium to small size. There'll be a main panel, it's 24 inches by 19 inches, and and a secondary panel mounted below that's 20 inches by 8.3 inches. Next slide there. So here are some examples of what they look like. So several, two from Astoria and one from Hammond there. That Free Willy sign, if anyone remembers that iconic scene at the end of Free Willy where the whale jumps over the breakwater, that was actually filmed in Hammond, the Hammond Marina right across the bay from Astoria, minus the whale. That was obviously CGI. So that's kind of what they look like mounted to the post. You can see next to the Historic Film Museum there in Astoria and next to a car there, a small SUV, give you kind of a sense of what these look like out, I like to say in the wild. Right? So, want to pause there. Does anyone have any questions or before I should keep going or like that? Okay.
I'm not seeing any hands yet, Matthew.
All right, great. Next slide there, Kendall. So a little bit about why we want to bring this film trail stop to Oregon City. You might think that we're little Oregon City. We haven't had a lot of movies filmed. We've actually had quite a few major television streaming shows and movies filmed. Movies such as Homer and Eddie, where I know many people in the community were in a parade that was in the scene. The Hunted, Bandits, Twilight and Management, and television shows, right, such as I mentioned, Grimm. More recently, things like The Librarians, Trinkets, and Everything Sucks. Some teen dramas there. So we actually have a kind of a robust and unique offering to share with our visitors. All right, next slide there. And then so kind of what we're proposing is to place a sign on the Oregon City Promenade, which is Oregon City Parks, why I'm here today. The lead film really would be Twilight, the young adult film, where there were scenes filmed at the mill, so people were able to look down on the mill. We'll also mention that there were scenes filmed at the Clackamas County Community College Greenhouse, the Stonecliff Inn, and the restaurant over in Carver, right outside city limits as well. So quite a few little stops right around there. And then the Did You Know panel would feature information on Grimm, which was actually filmed at the mill as well, and Trinkets and Everything Sucks, which actually had scenes filmed right on the promenade themselves.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yeah, sure, Doug.
Sorry for not having a hand up.
No worries.
When you say signage on the promenade, is it going to essentially point to the area where the film was made?
Yeah, so it'll be on the promenade, kind of like right next to the railing. I'm going to get to kind of where I'm proposing to put it a little bit later. But yeah, and overlooking the Blue Heron site there. Yeah, and on the text of the sign itself, we're still kind of dialing in the copy, but it'll actually say filmed below, something like that. The funding for this project, it would come from a combination of the Economic Development Department, our tourism promotion budget, the Oregon Film Office, and the Willamette Valley Visitors Association. So we're not actually asking the Parks Department for any funding to make the sign or install it.
Good.
As I said, as a staunch supporter of the outdoors, I am a big fan of the OPM model, which is other people's money. So in this sense, it's not the Parks Department's money. And so we're going to do continued outreach. We've reached out to the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association to have a meeting and share this information with them as well, since that's the neighborhood we're in. The Historic Review Board, we're going to kind of give them an informational presentation. However, we found out that we actually don't need their necessary approval for this, since it's not a city registered site. We still want to let them know. And then also hoping to have some activation events hopefully once we get things approved, to kind of celebrate this film trail signs with the community, and then ongoing maintenance that will be a burden of the ECDED department and the film office as well, in case there's any vandalism of the sign.
Okay, Matthew, I have a small correction on that one.
Yes.
The promenade, it was placed on the National Register of Historic Sites by the city, along with the elevator and the stairway.
Yes, you are correct. It is on the National Register, but it's not on the city register. So therefore, we discovered we actually, if it's on the national but not the city, we don't actually need the HRB's. Doesn't actually have to approve it. Where if it was on the city register, if say parks and we got permits and everyone signed off, the HRB said no, we wouldn't be able to do it. So
Okay,
it is,
thank you
you're
for
right
the
there. It is on the,
clarification.
yes. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Karen. All right, next slide there. So about where to place it. My original hope was, frankly, to place it on the that stone railing that you see, right? That constructed in 1937 under a WPA program. But don't worry, I'm not going to ask you for that. What we're hoping to do now, just because it's located on those basalt cliffs on the promenade there, is place it on either one of these two signs that are already existing. This light sign, as you can see on the right, or the flagpole on the left there. Just trying to dial in who's, the flagpole is under the jurisdiction of Oregon City. That light pole might be a PG&E light pole, so we're trying to figure that out as well. But that's kind of our hope there. Just thinking that it might be a little unfeasible to dig a hole on that basalt cliff to put a signpost in there. And rather than go out with a shovel and dig 20 holes to find a little bit of soil, I think Kendall and Denise and John might have an issue with me doing that. Just going to try to go path of least resistance there and mount it to an existing pole. That's all I have. I believe that's the last slide there. But okay, yeah, kind of pause there. And I guess turn it over, Aaron, to you and the rest of the pack, and for feedback, for questions, discussion, and whatnot.
Okay, Sean, you have your hand up.
Just a quick question. I was looking at something on the screen and I kind of missed your point about the flagpole and that location. Can you kind of repeat that for me again?
Sorry, muted myself. It was too good of Zoom Zoom behavior there. Yeah, so we believe the flagpole is managed by the city. The light pole we might be a PG&E pole, trying to dial that in right now. But that's where we're hoping to affix the sign to, rather than any poles.
So it would be against national flag etiquette to place a sign on a flagpole, and I would recommend not to put one anywhere around that location, or else you detract from the American flag and the pole.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Question about that then.
Who's this? Who's speaking, please?
Troy, and sorry, I was going to raise my hand, but for some reason I can't find the hand raise on this computer.
All right, Troy.
So, but I agree with, I mean, Sean's correct on that. Not that anyone needs my confirmation because Sean knows, but, and so I was going to bring that up, but, and I like, I mean, just from the sign itself, I do like it having its own post. I think it also adds to your sign itself to have its own post. But then Sean, my question to you then is, how far away from the flagpole should it be to not be in the vicinity? Like what's considered not in the vicinity of the flagpole?
That's a good question, and I would have to look that up. I do not know the answer. That said, I think we could probably use some common sense on this. And there's other places on the promenade where we've had too many signs within 2 or 3 feet of each other. And I call it sign pollution, but the message gets lost when you have two near each other. Down at the Southern Interest, there used to be multiple no trespassing signs, or excuse me, park rules signs right next to the name of the park. And it looked really bad, and park staff, when we pointed out to them, graciously moved the park hours sign about 50 feet up. And so dealing with the American flag and that pole, I don't know the answer, Troy, but I agree. And frankly, I've seen this stuff in Astoria and down on the coast. We've done the film tour in Astoria, and you want this to stand out on its own.
Well, and honestly, the way that park is, it's a walking park. People walk from one end to the other, and to have a sign, have various signs or various attractions along the path would be beneficial to that walking. And so you might consider putting it at some distance beyond, again, just another place to look. You've got that plaque there. There's places to stop and see the falls. You could have another place to see your movie plaque. Then you've got the flag. Like, you could have various places for people to see different things. And to Sean's point, not have the pollution of too many signs and nobody sees anything. So it might be a consideration just to give your sign its own attention and not be lost. So I think that's a very good point, because I think it's beneficial, but let's not stick it in a bush and expect people to dig through the bush to find the sign, for lack of a better explanation. But my second question to you then is, there are several movies and TV shows that have been shot here. Are you considering just one sign? What are your thoughts about, and again, we don't want to plaster signs all over Oregon City, but what are your thoughts about other locations or other signs throughout Oregon City?
Yeah, that's a great question. And before I answer that, I just want to back up to one thing Sean said. Is we originally looked at placing this kind of on Main Street downtown, kind of at the block before Main Street hits 99 there. But there is already a large number of signs there, so sign pollution, right, was a consideration there already. So didn't want to get lost there. But as far as other movies, really, based on the kind of dimensions of this signage, right, we only have a few movies to mention, right, because it's going to be a couple sentences on each. And so the idea is to list those few kind of major movies, or it might not be a major motion picture, right, but it's the major one that people would know or of that point of interest. So looking to highlight those 3 or 4 really that were filmed on there, and then use some of the digital resources, right? So website, interactive experience, or the traveloregoncity.com website to talk a little bit more about all the other films that were placed. And kind of, we want to hopefully get this one sign in and then see if there's robust public enthusiasm for it. We can maybe look at expanding the number of signage or stops in Oregon City as well.
Okay, Derek. Derek?
I'm getting up.
Okay. Your hand's up.
I like the idea. I was just wondering, is there, if in the future, if there is an increase in movie making in the area, is there a system in place of deciding what movies are going to be selected for a sign, other than being the bigger? You hit on it a little bit there as far as being the more popular or well known, but I'm just saying, is there, if for some reason there was some sort of controversy on a movie, what would be the place, or how are you guys handling that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one thing maybe you're thinking there is if there's a controversy with, we kind of go back and realize, one film or another wasn't maybe the optimal film to display and to promote Oregon City. I think that's kind of what we're thinking there. Yeah, that's a great question. We don't really have I wouldn't say there isn't a set of guidelines that governs this, right? This is so new, right? The film trail itself is very young. It's in its infancy. And so, if we do have an increase in filming, we would love to maybe add an additional, as Troy asked, add additional signage. That's, one of the roles of the Oregon Film Office is to promote Oregon as an opportunity, as a location to film. So we're hoping that happens. And so we'll just, I guess we will ascertain that if it comes up, but we don't necessarily have a planning matrix in place at this point for that.
Okay, Brett.
Hey, Matt. 2 questions for you. Number 1, sorry guys, I got my dog. He wants my attention. So if you see him in the video there, that's where he is. Matt, 2 questions. Number 1, do these signs ever get vandalized? And if so, where does the budget come to replace them or repair them?
Yeah, so there's been one instance so far of I think the 14 existing signs of some graffiti. And that, because of, I don't have the name off the top of my head. It's just like, it's basically very like high density, kind of like polymer type thing, plastic. You're actually able to pressure wash it and pressure wash a lot of this stuff off. And right now, I think at least as we initially roll this out, looking at that would maybe come out of the ECDEV and the tourism promotion budget. That's until, Oregon City gets a massive parks levy going. That was a joke.
But it's a good one. It would be
So,
good to
yeah.
have that. It's a good
No
target.
jokes, Matthew.
Sorry. So I'm really trying to throw everything at Kendall here and while he's new. Yeah, no. So right now it would come from the ECDEV budget, and that would include if it gets vandalized to the point it's not feasible, replacing it as well. Right now, the signs are kind of in the 3 digits, so that's well within our budget too. If we have to replace it initially.
Okay. Second question for you is, how do you measure the robustness of these signs and their effect on tourism?
That's a great question. Yeah, so our best, and I would say our strongest baseline measurement for tourism in general, right, is transient lodging tax. It's heads and beds,
Okay.
right? That's how we measure tourism. We had an initial intent to actually deploy a survey to people staying in the River Shore, which is one of 2 places that generates transient lodging tax in Oregon City. It's the major generator. The other is being the RV park. And so that was obviously put on pause by COVID. And now we're actually pivoting to a digital platform and going to be emailing past lodging guests, seeing what drives their tourism. But there have been studies kind of around the country, around the world about film tourism. There's also anecdotal evidence, right? For example, Twilight itself was set in Forks, Washington, and young adults traveling to Forks has actually been one of the major bolsters of the Forks economy for the past 5 or 10 years. So we don't have the concrete numbers really on how it was successful, but part of the work that comes out onto my plate is getting a better understanding of why people are coming to Oregon City. So when tourism does pick up, and we're able to survey visitors, survey lodging occupants, we'll actually be including, film tourism in that as a question. So we will be looking to measure it. I wish I had, better numbers to say it's a 3.7%, annual increase at this point, but because especially the film trail is so new, we just don't have that at this point.
Well, I don't see any negative impact from it. So I think that but I'm just wondering how we would actually measure that. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we go to a vote on this, we don't usually do this, but I'm going to give you a statement of contact, and if anybody feels that it compromises my vote on this project, I will tell you I have taken part in the tourism group, and I also created a website that has everything ever filmed in Oregon City. TV, movie, independent movie, TV movie, and Everything Sucks isn't up yet. That's my fault. And I have shared it with this committee and have made clear to Matthew that I'm willing to share all the information that I found. And honestly, from what has been filmed in Oregon City, I think this is the best possible place to start. I would suggest farther south on the promenade, and I understand that finding diggable ground is a problem, but I agree that the flagpole is not the best place to put it, partially because trees obscure a lot of view of the mill site. So first of all, raise your hand if you think I should recuse myself from the vote.
See, Kathy does have her hand up, but she's had it up for a while, so I don't want to.
Kathy doesn't count. And actually, I'm not seeing it on my list of participants.
I move that Kathy
Kathy, do you
be,
have
I
something
move
to
that
say?
Kathy can speak.
Kathy? She's not showing up on my list with her hand up.
I've had my hand up forever. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, well, of course.
I had the same question to Matthew. If we have additional movies coming, is there a way to, add movies? Because when the economy picks up, we're a great place to make movies. But he already answered that.
And the funny thing is, since everything sucks, anything that's been filmed in Oregon City is online content. So somebody filmed something in their kitchen and put it on YouTube. I haven't found any professional filming since Netflix did Everything Sucks. But I keep watching. All right. Doug?
Yeah, thank you. My question is, you mentioned coming to vote. Is the reason we're voting on this is because the signage will be on the promenade?
Correct.
Okay.
Karen,
They're being placed in the park. And I'm sorry, who was that?
Troy.
Doug.
Oh,
Wait a minute. Doug, I got you.
Troy.
Troy?
I don't think it's going to matter. It's just, that's the sense I get. However, I think for the record, and I think it's fair that given your affiliation, my opinion is you should recuse yourself from the vote. If this were a more serious matter and you had this affiliation, we would want you to recuse your vote. So I just think it probably would be a fair thing, and it is on record. So I think it would be fair. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to matter.
Okay. Not seeing any other hands. I'm guessing we need a vote that approves the concept, but Matthew may need to return with a location. Up to whoever wants to make a motion, please raise your hand.
So moved.
All right, Doug Neely's moved, second.
Second.
By
Andy
sorry.
Crump. Andy Crump.
Thank you, Andy. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Aye.
Troy Bollinger,
Aye.
Derek Kugel,
Aye.
Alicia Hammock,
Aye.
Sean Datchler,
Aye.
Andy Crump,
Aye.
Brent Haverkamp,
Aye.
Doug Neely,
Aye.
Karen Morey.
Aye with note of previous contact.
All right.
All right, thank you, Matthew.
Good job, Matthew.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody. Nice to see you all.
Excellent job.
Thanks. So it sounds like, so thank you for the vote of confidence. So it sounds like what I will do is work with Kendall and staff to, once I kind of figure out a few different places, figure out what's the best, and maybe we'll come back hopefully next meeting or meeting after with an exact location for you.
I believe you got the right impression.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you, everybody.
Okay.
I'll sign off here and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, tree removal policy. My original memo is from Laura. I'm used to Pete talking to me about trees. Laura, are you presenting the tree
I
removal
am.
policy?
I am. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Good evening, Laura Turway. I serve the city as our community development director, so I support our building and our planning departments. Kendall, do you want to bring up the PowerPoint for me? I'm here to talk to you tonight about a tree removal policy, and it's a policy that we were given direction to do, next slide, from our city manager, Tony Conkle. Uh-oh. Let's see. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we're given to do this in regard to the trees that were removed at the park property. And what he asked is that we come up with some type of internal review process to identify when significant trees were going to be removed, that there was some type of internal vetting that was written down and consistent throughout the city, and that it included some type of consideration of alternatives to tree removal. And for some more significant trees, that there was some public notification component to it. Next slide, please. Before we get too far into that, I just wanted to give a quick snapshot of tree removal in Oregon City last calendar year. So in 2019, we spent $478,750 total as a city on trees. That does include staff time as well as actual planting and equipment and things like that. We planted 628 trees, pruned 666, and then removed 188. Next slide. Once we were given direction to move forward with a policy or code amendments from our city manager, the city commission wanted us to work, and the city manager wanted us to work on this with our natural resources committee. And so we worked with them to create a draft policy, and it's evolved over time and have gone to planning commission. At this point, we believe that we have a fairly solid policy in place, and we are anticipating going to the Transportation Advisory Committee next month. And after that, we'll go straight to the City Commission and ask for adoption of the policy by resolution. Next slide, please. This policy, I'm just going to give you some of the major highlights of it. It really applies to city trees on city property and also trees on urban renewal property. It applies to when the city itself wants to remove a tree. It also applies within the right-of-way. So if Public Works or Parks were the two major components of the city that remove trees would want to remove a tree, it would be triggered. If a public member wants to remove a tree in the planter strip in front of their house, which is city property within the right-of-way, this is not subject to them. This is only, again, city staff on city property itself. Next slide, please. So the determination for which trees should be subject to this policy is our heritage tree code. It's slightly modified with a recommendation from our Natural Resources Committee to add the Pacific Madrone tree. But other than that, everything else is our heritage tree. We felt that there was a great list that had already been vetted and identified trees that had particular significance to the city. As you can see on the heritage tree list, it identifies specific species and minimum size associated with that species. But then at the bottom, it also captures basically all trees over 20 inches diameter at breast height. Next slide. There are some exceptions to this policy. This policy doesn't apply to habitat restoration areas or in or abutting water quality facilities or nuisance plants. That includes our nuisance plant list as well as some others within the region, such as those on the Oregon State Weed Board or Clackamas County Soil and Water Conservation District Weed Wise Program, very long name. And then also eminent hazard trees are exempt. An eminent hazard tree is a tree in which 30% or more has fallen or is going to fall within 72 hours, and it's going to fall on something that can't be removed or protected. So it's going to cause hazard maybe onto a structure where people are at, or maybe going to fall in the middle of the street or something like that. In that case, you don't have to go through this policy because this policy takes time to do a public vetting of the tree removal and things like that. But once the hazard tree is removed, then you'll have to come back later and do the process after the fact. Next slide. So in this scenario, if a department, whether it's Public Works or Parks, wants to remove a tree, they've got to put together a portfolio of reasons why. They've got to document the location of the tree, what species and size, why it's being removed, and also list alternatives that they've considered for tree removal. Could they move whatever project so they didn't have to cut the tree? Is there ways to help the tree recover, and so forth? Next slide. Once that documentation is created, it goes up to that department manager, and the department manager is meant to be a first review of this documentation. So once the department manager is happy with the written assessment, then it goes to a third party for review. So if the tree is over 40 inches in DBH, then it needs to go to a certified arborist who will do a written report with an analysis of alternatives to tree removal. And that analysis also has to include some potential cost of those alternatives and the practicality of them too. We really want to make sure that when we do this analysis that we have full information to know if some of these alternatives are feasible and how much they will really cost us to implement. If a tree is under 40 inches DBH, the department manager gets to choose who the third-party reviewer is. They can either choose a certified arborist or they can have a staff assessment. In the staff assessment scenario, Public Works, Parks, and Planning has multiple staff members that all get together and do the same analysis. Is there alternatives that can happen as opposed to the tree removal, and how feasible and how much would they cost? How practical are all those? The point of the staff assessment is to have a mechanism where we don't always have to get a certified arborist if the tree isn't as large as 40 inches, that maybe we do this internally. Sometimes for trees that are less significant in size, we have a lot of expertise on staff. I want to acknowledge that we don't have a forester or an arborist that works for the city. So it is people who may have ideally some education or experience or knowledge related to trees making an assessment. Next slide. So after we have the initial assessment, that goes to the department manager, then that goes to the third party reviewer. We combine all of that with an application form, and that goes on to a newly created website. And in the newly created website, it's similar to land use notices, if you've seen those or got those. We have a website where you can sign up to get an email every so often when one gets posted. And so you can track along if you're a member of the public. That website and notice, we would sign up all members of PRAC, but you can unsign up yourself if you want to as well, or tell us if you don't want to be signed up, as well as just different departments and agencies. And then we also put a physical notice on the sign. So if you're a neighbor and you maybe haven't signed up to this semi-obscure website that the city set up for tree removal, you would still get some type of notice that it's going to happen. And the tree notice period would happen for 14 days. And after 14 days, if there's some unresolved concerns or comments, then the situation gets elevated to the city manager, who can then decide if the city should move forward with it or have an opportunity to address some of the concerns that were not addressed with staff during the 14-day comment period. Next slide. I do want to acknowledge a couple of things. One is that this is an additional process that is another layer on top of all the existing permits and processes to remove trees. So we have, I think it's 7 sections in our code where we talk about tree removal. And so all of those permits, processes still apply. This is just another layer that applies to staff. That would be a policy adopted by resolution. So for trees that are really significant, and we're sticking with this number 40. So if they're over 40 inches DBH, we felt like they could go on a city commission consent agenda. That way there is a little bit more notice to the public about the removal of significant trees. We have done some notice of larger tree removal, like the ones that were removed in front of the new public safety building and those kind of things. But this would be an official item on the consent agenda. So the city commission can choose to pull it off the consent agenda, and then they can choose to not move forward with the tree removal if that makes sense for them. Notice when that happens will go to the Natural Resources Committee, yourselves, as well as the Transportation Advisory Committee. We're really thinking about prac and tac together because some of the trees might be in the public right-of-way and some might be on parkland. Next slide. There's a couple other outstanding things. So I talked to you about this process and these layers of reviews that would happen. But the commission also wanted, if the tree is over a certain size, to not be allowed to pay a fee in lieu. When you remove trees elsewhere in our code, it says you have to mitigate for that tree removal by planting more trees. But in some cases, but you can also pay a fee in lieu instead of doing the planting. The city takes that fee in lieu of money and plants trees, and that's what funds our Friends of Trees contract, which does the trees in the right of way. So for trees over 40 inches DBH, the city would not be allowed to do a fee in lieu. And then also the commission was interested in reusing the timber for trees that were over 25 inches or more DBH if it's feasible. So obviously if it's infected or things like that, you're not going to reuse any of that. And so I want to acknowledge that reuse of wood has many forms and many things. You can have it planed and you can have it cured and go through a process to create furniture that is incredibly expensive. You can also use it for habitat restoration on site, or in some cases, the city has places where we put trees and you can pick that up as firewood. So the request is to have firewood if nothing else is feasible. There was also a suggestion to work with some type of craftsman group or construction form of some type to see if they would want the wood to do something with the wood there. And then lastly, you could see there's a lot of process that's added that costs time, but the real money, there's a money component to this, which is this project only works for us to consider alternatives if there's funding to implement those alternatives. So with it, we would have a budget request to our city commission to fund 2 separate line items, one for parks and one for public works, to have a dedicated fund that's dedicated towards this process. So we have some clear funding to make some of these alternatives to tree removal actually feasible, whether it's investing into the health of the tree or whether it is adding sidewalk or whatever that thing is. I do want to acknowledge that sometimes when we do some of these options, they include more than just the initial investment, right? The maintenance and the upkeep on, for example, the trees in front of the library have, from my understanding, incredibly expensive over the years. So this is an ongoing thing, so it needs a stable budget to support it over the long run. Next slide. It's my last. So that's all I have. Sorry, I've been talking at you quite a bit. Any questions, concerns? You love it?
Okay, Laura, hang on for just a second here. I see that Jonathan is available by phone. Can we get him admitted to this? Kendall?
And then also we have worked on this with a lot of staff, which it does include Dawn and Jonathan. So yes, more the merrier.
Okay, because Jonathan's dealing with the fact that the cemetery, Park Place Park, and other locations are starting to designate heritage trees and heritage tree groups, including Water Board, and welcome Jonathan. What is your view on this policy? Looks to me
Yeah,
like
I've been here
Go.
been here the whole time. For some reason, I'm not coming across very well. So, but please repeat your question.
Where do you stand on the proposed policy?
I think that we need funding for sure if it's going to go in this direction. We know as well that there's also going to be a lot more costs associated with arborist reports. They're actually quite expensive. So, you know, I guess that's my stance is as long as there's funding for everything, it's.
Okay, Kendall, any further staff input?
It looks like Kathy has her hand up, but I just wanted to chime in a little bit on this one as well. We did have some conversations with Laura, myself, John, also Denise, and we stressed the importance of just making sure that we have the resources because I know there will be situations where there are issues with ADA accessibility, trip hazards, diseased trees, where we will need to make some decisions that may not be popular as well. And to make sure that we have in our procedures when it's not popular and when we're getting public input that they don't want us to move forward, that then the city manager can chime in so we can still move forward in the process. Because obviously we want to make sure that we don't run into any issues like we have in the past.
Okay, and a touch of humor because I'm a front row observer. Laura mentioned the public safety building. I'm looking out at 20 or more trees with massive root balls, as well as other plantings that were developed or delivered over 3 days last week. The public safety building is definitely doing a beautiful job planning for restoration of what they took out. All right, so questions? And I'm not seeing hands. Hands?
Karen, this is
Hand
Kathy.
bend up.
Whoa. Kathy, okay. I don't see your hand, dear.
One of the issues, and I took Kendall for a walkabout at the Pioneer Center, and John and I have looked at these trees as well as Denise. It's important to look at the site and what you're using a site for. The Senior Center, we've had over the years trees taken out, and John's helped us a great deal with trees that are dropping walnuts and pine cones and needles that create trip hazards. So I agree with Kendall that it's really important that we have the ability to assess a tree situation. And a senior center having extensive trip hazards and debris from trees is something really important to be able to look at, analyze, and make a decision to remove and replace with appropriate trees. We've replaced a lot of trees that were much less appropriate when that facility was built and replaced them with extremely attractive and appropriate trees that are more of a benefit to the community and that site for its specific purpose. So I want to make sure that that's something that we're aware of and can deal with as a Parks Department.
Okay, I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to go down the prac list.
No,
Andy, any input? Hang on, Doug.
No, I put up my hand and you didn't see it. No, that's not the okay,
Okay,
but the
I
hand
don't
disappears on.
All right, let's start with Andy. Andy, any input?
Nope, I don't have any input. No.
Okay, Doug, your turn.
Well, first of all, I agree with Jonathan's concern about the budget aspect. I don't want to see Parks, Park and Recreation's budget on various other things that they do reduce to support this effort. And so my hope is that the City Commission is going to identify additional monies that is not currently in the PrAC budget to do this activity. And the other thing I was going to mention, they are expensive to do. And if we find that we're doing a lot of them to actually have the city consider whether it be a part-time or full-time arborist, if we find out that we're running into a really costly situation.
Okay, Alicia? Any input?
No input
Sorry.
tonight.
Okay. Brent?
I really didn't have any input, but what Doug said really struck with me, especially from a budgetary standpoint, because during this whole COVID epidemic, I've had the fortunate opportunity to go and explore a lot of our city's parks. You know, one thing I've noticed, and we're talking about tripping hazards, so many of our parks need to be updated with the paths themselves that need attention. I mean, I don't even think that they fall under ADA, and I'd like to see some budget money go for pathway improvement just in our parks alone. So I don't want to see any potential parks and recreation budget be taken away from any maintenance activities that we need to do to our parks.
Okay, Derek. Derek?
So I assume, I'm guessing this is a response to what happened about a year ago there by the pool. I don't like to be, I like the idea on the fiscal part. I guess I don't truly, or maybe we don't all understand the financial part of it. I certainly don't, but I don't want to be backed against a wall like, you know, Brent was saying, and on a policy that would maybe go too far as far as, you know, what we can and can't do. But I may be just not understanding it enough.
Troy? Oh, sorry, dear. Troy?
Well, everything needs money. And so I agree with the need for that. At the same time, we don't have the money. So when we say it'll work great as long as there's the funding, I guess my question is, where the heck's that coming from? And then you ask for volunteers and the staff as who's willing to give up money to fund this. I don't think you're gonna get anyone raising their hand. So then my question for Laura, I guess, would be, if we say no, or if we say, yeah, go ahead and do it, but we can't have any money for it, what happens? Like, what is the result if the answer is great program, but we can't implement it? Then what? Do we just cut down whatever trees we want? Is it just willy-nilly, we'll look at it case by case? Like, what's the alternative?
Great question.
Okay, Laura, hang on a second. At this point, is anybody comfortable making a motion to pass what was presented to us in print?
Not until my question's answered.
And chime in, anybody else?
Let's hear Laura.
All right, so I would suggest that this be put on the September agenda.
I have the answer though. I can't answer it for you.
Go.
All right, so we have, it's okay. We have had discussions with our finance department about funding, and we feel that it is reasonable to at least get $30,000 per department as new revenue that's not coming in or that's not already dedicated to parks for that. And so what the revenue component does is, one is it funds the arborist reports, but then the other thing is that it funds the ability to implement some of the alternatives which may have cost. So if you were running out of that revenue, then you're probably more likely to remove trees with good reason, because the whole point of this is to explain the rationale as to why it makes sense, but you're going to run out of the ability to pay costs to do measures to either improve the health of the tree or change your project so you don't have to remove the trees. So the process itself just adds layers of explaining why we're removing the tree, and then having that go through multiple checkpoints. The funding just supports the ability to do those alternatives. So even if there's no funding, there's still that added layer of explaining to the public and why we're removing trees in the first place. But we feel that funding is absolutely critical to the importance of this, because what we want to do is to remove trees when that makes sense. If there's a way that, is there an alternative that may cost a little bit money, but may be beneficial in the long run, then that may make sense too.
All right. Is anyone comfortable making a motion at this point?
I support the supporting the policy, the draft policy for tree removal.
So Doug Neely moved the additional permitting and notification process for city removal of trees as proposed. Is there a second?
I
second.
Second. Or Alicia.
No, name first.
Alicia
seconded?
Hammack, I second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Does the motion then include the funding necessary for both departments to go with it?
That will depend on your acceptance of what Laura just added.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Does the motion then include that if we accept it?
I'll modify the motion to accept the 30,000 that goes into each of the departments.
All right, seconder, do you agree with that?
Alicia Hammack, yes, I do.
Okay, there is a motion. Roll call, please.
Troy Bollinger,
No.
Derek Kugel, Alicia Hammack,
Yes.
Sean Datchler,
No.
Andy Crump,
Yes.
Brent Haverkamp.
I have my hand up for a question, so
Oh.
it wasn't called on.
I'm sorry, it's not showing up on my phone. Oh,
Okay.
there you are. Hi, Brent. Ask your question.
Laura, I guess when you said $30,000 per department, what's the total funding amount then? Is it just $30,000 or is it more than that?
30 for public works, 30 for parks.
Okay.
Okay, Brent, with clarification, your vote?
No.
Roll call continue?
Doug Neely
Yes.
and Karen Maury.
Yes. And I lost count, Kendall. What is that?
He's working on it.
Yes. 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 Six yes, 2 no. Is that correct?
I think it was more than 2 no's.
I will trust
Should be
you.
Five. It should be 5 and 3.
5 and
Okay,
3.
5 and 3 sounds better. Thank you.
Good.
All right, Laura, that's passed. Take it forward to the commission.
I will communicate the concerns about funding, and then it sounded like there was a concern about too much process and response. Is that accurate?
I would agree with that. That's from Karen.
Thank you.
May I ask something? Or add
Yes,
something? Laura, are you going to take Kathy's concerns over too?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
I think it solves some of those because it provides a way to have a thought process where, I mean, if trees make sense to be removed. It's not meant to stop the removal, just explain why.
Okay, we are now down to item 5. We have, I now see 3 public speakers. I'm watching my analog clock. So, Cameron McCready, Jesse Buss, and Jim Nacita will each get 3 minutes to speak on item number 5, and I will start with Cameron.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Being representing the neighborhood association, I would like to ask for 5 minutes, which is the length of the video I'd like to show.
And I have to agree that under the commission rules, yes, you can have 5 minutes.
So the video's been provided.
I'm pulling it up.
Thank you.
All right. I'll stop watching my clock until it comes up.
Hold on.
In 1910, the Board of Water purchased this land for the purpose of building an enormous reservoir in City Park. The plans for the reservoir changed, and instead, the Water Board called the land its 13.5-acre park, set aside for park purposes, for the use and benefit of the youth of Oregon City.
Hi, I'm Mike Mitchell, and I'm a resident of the Caulfield neighborhood. I encourage your support of the resolution to designate the upper yard portion of the Public Works yard as part of Water Board Park. I voted for that 2 years ago as a member of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. I supported it then and I support it now. We just have so few opportunities to add parkland that we'll need in the future for our city.
Hi, my name is Jackie Hammer-Williams, and I've lived in the Oregon City Park Place neighborhood for 30 years. I'm the founder of the Oregon City Farmers Market. And I really would like to see the city of Oregon City give charter protection to Lower Water Board Park. It's a unique and marvelous area, and I can see it would be a great place to have community gardens and be a community gathering space.
By 1921, improving Water Board Park was part of the official city budget. And in 1931, the city was employing 5 people to improve and maintain the park.
Hello, I'm Ed Lindquist. I'm an Oregon City resident that lives next to Waterboard Park on the upper side. I'm concerned about the park and where it goes and what happens to it. Because once it's gone, I can tell you, after having been a county commissioner for 14 years and doing whatever we could to preserve the ground for parks, that's a diamond in the rough. So if that upper yard could be added to the park, I think it would be a very positive thing for the parks of Oregon City.
In 1935, the city commissioned a survey of the boundaries of Waterboard Park, which was recorded with the county. In 1939, city manager J.L. Franzen described Waterboard Park as one of the only large parks owned by the city.
Hello, Roger Feller-Tice, President of the Oregon City Parks Foundation, a stakeholder here in Waterboard Park. On behalf of our membership, we fully support adding Lower Waterboard, also known as the upper yard, into the Waterboard Park boundaries.
I'm Doug Neely. I'm a resident of the Westmead Farms neighborhood. I'm the former mayor of Oregon City, and I'm currently serving on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. 2 years ago, that committee voted to recommend to the City Commission that the upper yard of the Public Works be included as part of Waterboard Park. This year, earlier, we went ahead and reaffirmed that effort.
Although brush was cleared and graded for a double tennis court and ground selected for a possible ball diamond, the project was put on hold due to the war effort.
Hi, my name is Dara Kramer, and I am a teacher at Gardner Middle School. I believe that the lower part of Waterboard Park should be officially recognized as park space. Our parklands are essential for all of us, especially children, for all of our health and well-being.
Hi, I'm Jerry Herman, president of Rivers of Life Center, a youth education and training organization. Waterboard Park and the flat below it are two seamless elements of what could be Oregon's geologic significant park. The lands were scoured by Ice Age floods. Time to tell the story at one site.
After World War II, the city resumed efforts to develop the park. This resulted in the 1952 master plan, which included tennis courts, outdoor theater, recreation center, picnic areas, open spaces, and parking. Acknowledging that World War II related buildings had been built on the flat area of the park, the 1952 plan declared that every effort should be made to clear the lower flat ground at the end of John Adams Street so that the several acres of Central Park area may be reclaimed and put to vital permanent use as park and recreation center. Here and now, much like in 1952, the community is ready to reclaim the lower area of Waterboard Park.
I'm Alice Norris, former mayor of Oregon City. Parks are important to our growing community, so let's preserve Waterboard Park and especially that lower area and get those boundaries secured.
Cameron, that's 5 analog minutes. Jesse?
All right. Can you see and hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Let me know when I can start, Karen.
Go.
Good evening. I'm Jesse Buss, resident of Oregon City. I support charter park protections for this land, and I'm personally thrilled that the City Commission appears to be on the brink of making history by permanently protecting these additional 5 acres as parkland. But it's not just me. During the past 5 years, the groundswell of public support for this proposal has been impressive. And part of the reason for that impressive level of public involvement is that there have been many opportunities for public comment. I've lost count of the number of times this proposal has been discussed in committees, including the Natural Resources Committee, PRAC, of course, the Citizen Involvement Committee, and the City Commission. In those years, hundreds of residents have commented and participated in efforts to protect this land for open space and recreational purposes. In just one City Commission meeting earlier this year, nearly 50 citizens from throughout Oregon City submitted supportive comments. Less than 5 commenters, including Ms. Maury on PRAC, testified against charter protections. The community cares deeply about this land, and they've come out in force to show it. Most of you I don't know, so I assume you don't know me. The last time I presented to PRAC on this topic was almost exactly 2 years ago in September of 2018. And at that time, only 4 of the 9 of you were serving on PRAC. 5 of you are new since then. 3 of the 4 of you that are still on the board voted against charter protections in 2018. Mr. Neely is the only one that's currently on PRAC, that was on PRAC then, that voted in favor of it. PRAC serves an important advisory role, but that role does not require PRAC to reconsider its votes just because its membership changes. With regard to Waterboard Park, PRAC has already weighed in. With regard to 2018, PRAC carefully considered the public comments on this issue and then recommended the City Commission designate the land as protected under the charter. Then it took 18 months to get PRAC's recommendation before the City Commission. So the public has moved from commenting before PRAC and other subcommittees to the City Commission. It's a linear process, and sometimes it takes a long time. In this case, 2 years. So with respect, we're past the time for PRAC to weigh in yet again on this issue. There was a lot of discussion and a lot of public comment before PRAC back in 2018, and to some extent early 2019. But we don't need to reinvent the wheel and start over at the beginning.
Jesse, I gave you 4 analog minutes.
Was that really 4?
It was. Jim?
Can I beg your indulgence and finish up here?
15 seconds.
Okay.
Just for you.
The staff recommendation for this item is no action required, and that's appropriate. As I stated, I can't count the number of times this has already been discussed. The City Commission is moving forward. The public needs to be able to count on a process moving from point A to point B. Let's end the cycle of 110 years and preserve these 5 acres as permanent parkland. I think we'll all be proud of it. Thank you.
And you took 30 instead of 15. Jim?
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is James Nasita. I live in Oregon City. I'm an amateur historian here in town, although I will genuflect and defer to Madam Chair as far as professional reputation and accomplishment as a historian. I'm here tonight to comment on the disposition of the Camp Adair buildings. I was the one who did the research to discover that these 2 buildings were in fact Camp Adair officers clubs that were moved to Oregon City in 1947 after World War II. There may be 5 or 10 of them left on the planet. It still stuns me that Oregon City doesn't consider these 2 buildings as treasures and is willing to see them demolished. The direction of the City Commission appears to be to allow time to place an ad in a newspaper and have someone come and move them if they would like. I would like the PRAC to consider a recommendation to the City Commission that is more involved and serious. First of all, I don't know PRAC's how PRAC would be disposed to the Camp Adair buildings, but it seems to me the better course of action would be to decide on their fate in the upcoming master planning process the city is going to go through. Should the city, however, the commission decide that it still wants to proceed in its current course of action, I would like the PRAC to consider recommending to the commission whether a more fair and involved disposition process might be appropriate. In particular, anybody who sees an ad in the Daily Journal of Commerce or the Oregon City News and says, boy, I didn't know these Camp Adair buildings existed and I would like to take them. Well, they have some issues. One, anywhere they want to take these buildings, they're going to have to deal with land use rules. They're going to have to get land use approval. They might have to get a zone change for whatever use they want. That's not going to be able to happen with an ad that says, please submit your proposal within 60 days or 90 days. The city has to be serious and say in its ad that the city will, do what it takes to work with any person or nonprofit that wants to take these buildings, and we will do it for the long haul and cooperate with you. Language like that, not just, it's yours if you want to cart it away in 60 or 90 days. Anybody who sees an ad like that will know the city's not serious. And the city needs to be communicative upfront about its willingness to play ball. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, staff, who wants to go first? Nobody? Yo, staff.
I have my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Staff is just available to speak.
The only thing that I like to say in regards to the up yard, and obviously Laura will have some more information to provide, is some of our main concerns is obviously we want to do what's best for the community. And we've talked a lot about the funding that we need for parks. What we don't want to see happen is that the upper yard is designated as a charter park and then turned over to parks in disarray, and then we would be left with buildings that we would have to manage and resources that we don't have. So we would just want to make sure that if it was designated a charter park, that the land, there was remediation done, that the land was cleared and given to the Parks Department in good repair.
Okay, and I'm going to make my statement as chair, and then I am recusing myself from the final vote. I produced a report, and I spent way too much time sitting on a hard bench in court, dealing with the fact that in 1970, Upper Waterboard Park was declared a charter park. What is known as the Upper Yard of Public Works, there is absolutely no proof I could find or verifiable proof that that was actually part of the park at any point. It was part of a gravel pit. I don't understand the hurry. I am concerned over the two Camp Adair buildings. I hope somebody would buy them or deconstruct them and use the pieces. But there is also the old vocational school, which has a weak foundation and floor. There are bunkers. There are all sorts of public works facilities on that upper yard. And I have a serious concern over the Parks Department taking on the expense of clearing that property and making it park ready. And at that point, I will shut up. Raise your hand. I don't see a hand. Raise a hand.
Hey, Karen, my hand's raised.
Derek, there you go. Derek, go.
I'm going to let Brent talk first because his hand's been raised before mine.
Okay, thank you. Derek, or
Thank
Brent,
you.
go.
Thank you, Derek. So I've heard the term charter park, and I guess where I'm a little bit confused is what is the difference between a park and a charter park? It seems that this term charter park, I heard Jesse use it. I heard people saying against charter protection. So I really, really want to understand what this term charter means and is.
Can staff actually clarify what restrictions are placed on a charter park?
Or the pros and cons of a charter park. What are the pros,
Yeah.
what are the cons, what are the restrictions?
Denise, Kendall, can you clarify?
It's my understanding that with charter parks, if you want to make any major changes to parks, those parks, that you have to take it to the community for a vote. So it really makes it hard to make any kind of modifications to a charter park without getting additional approvals from the community.
I would tag on to that to just say that modifications not related to park use, such as if you want a sewer line through, or you would want to take away some type of thing. So it adds protection in our charter of this for the city of Oregon City specifically. So an extra layer that requires potential vote of the people of Oregon City for changes that are not park related.
Okay, Jesse, I am sorry, but public comment is done. Derek?
I wasn't sure about what you were going on there.
Derek, your question.
Okay. Well, it's more of a comment. I think, you know, last month I was on the side of not bringing in any more expenses to the park side. But as I listened to Jesse and think about what our position is as representing, the public in their eyes. I don't believe that, and step back for a second. If I remember right, one of the first meetings that we had when I was on this committee was about the upper park, and exactly what I think Doug and Jesse was saying is, I thought this was a done deal. And it seems like it's just been put off, for many years. And I don't know if that's exactly really the right thing to do as you go along. If someone makes a decision, we need to stall and then, and come back 2 years later and try to change it. And to wrap up, as we develop our land, certainly over in Thimble Creek, regardless of how you look at it, you're going to lose a lot of trees, woodland, things that are, environmentally important. And I think that unless the options for the upper yard could be something else, which I got the feeling from the city commission would be houses or apartments. I may be wrong on that, but that's what when I was in the meeting, that's what I got from it. I certainly am more on the edge of saving that land, for park and environmental purposes. I'm done.
Okay, Sean.
Doug Neely's hand's been up for about 5 minutes.
Oh, sorry. Doug, go first.
Well, my hand
It doesn't
disappears
show
all the
us
time.
a hand.
Well, I show the hand. Anyway, I'm a little confused. It was almost suggested by our parks director that once it's a charter park, modifications cannot occur. We have changes in our charter parks all the time, new equipment coming and so forth. I'm going to assume that if it comes in as a park or a charter park, there will be a public process to see what should be there. There's been talk about recreational equipment. We have at one of our parks, well, probably more at one park, we have parks, in fact, in which we have historic buildings, and they're part of the parks. And I think that is a public dialogue in itself. Once it's a charter park, what should be in the upper yard? The upper yard. And I don't really see an issue. I do not believe giving a charter designation means that what's ever there can't be changed. Now, I understand the parks director's concern about not being given this property when the Parks Department is going to be responsible for everything under its existing budget. And I believe that this is one of the things that can be deferred until we in fact increase the budget to the Parks and Recreation program. But I really don't see the problem with the two motions that have been made here, why they should be modified. I don't know how they'd be modified. And unless somebody comes up with a modification that deals with these questions that I'm asking, I think those can stand.
Okay, Sean.
Well, I'm going to try to throw a few things at the dartboard. First, I don't like to be bullied, and I feel like some of the comments tonight from the public are an attempt to bully us. We meet once a month, and we can change our opinion from month to month, or year to year, or as the board changes. The opinion today of Pratt could be different or exactly the same as it was 2 years ago, and there's nothing wrong with us discussing it again. With that being said, in the last 50 years, the way parks become charter parks goes like this, typically. We buy the land, we sit on the land for 5 to 15 years, we master plan it, we construct it, and then at some point after that park is dedicated, we make it a charter park and protect it because now it's complete. We don't want to, for something to come along and change its purpose. So based on that, I don't understand the need for charter protection on the upper yard when it was never a park. Now, that being said, it seems to me we're at step 1 or 2. It's city property. They now own it, right? So now we sit on it and we wait for a time in which the budget allows for that area to be master planned and constructed. And through that process, we may find the entire upper yard is constructed as a park. Or through that public process, we may find there's a reason unforeseen to all of us today to turn a small portion of that property into another use than a park. However, if we make it a charter park today, we restrict all of those potential future uses that through a public process and a master planning process, we may find out. So I'm not saying I'm against it becoming a charter park. I'm saying I see zero urgency or need for it to be done today, except for, frankly, there's 2 city commissioners that are up for re-election that want to lock this up so that any future commission doesn't have the decision-making abilities. And I'm saying, let's give the future PRAC and let's give the future city commission the decision-making ability to make the right decision. Now, that being said, we've got $22 million in unfunded maintenance. Over $1 million of that is in this park alone. Thinking outside the box, I don't even know if it's possible, but what if there's a small portion of the land that could be sold off and paid for that $1 million of unfunded maintenance directly in this park? Well, that's option 1. Option 2 is if there's $22 million of unfunded maintenance, where does this park fall on that list when we construct one park every 15 years or more? So in other words, if we do nothing and there's no revenue change, Waterboard Park will have no money put into that park for probably the next 30 years. And you can look at the last 30 to see the history. I'm probably not far off. But if through some creative work, a small portion of that is shaved off, there is a revenue possibility that could be turned directly into that park. And then the McLaughlin neighborhood has a potential jewel that could be improved in their neighborhood. So to me, that's why I would wish that we would take a stand today and as of, what is this, August of 2020, say, we don't wish for this to be brought in as a charter park at this time.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, I want full input. Alicia?
Sorry, driving.
Sorry.
So I guess I agree with much of what Sean said. I have concerns, as I voiced last month, in terms of the geologic instability of the site, the cost to, the Parks Department, as well as just the overall general fund for the city. I don't see what the rush is. And I just think there's just so many unknowns. And I think the McLaughlin neighborhood is very well organized, and they present themselves very well and have a very strong coalition pushing this. But I see a lot of risks that at this point I'm concerned about.
Okay, Andy.
I can't say I could say it as eloquently as Sean did, but and Alicia, but I lean towards their opinion on this. That I'm not all that familiar with all the background on this, but if we don't have to make a decision today, I don't understand without understanding all of the details. Admittedly, myself, I don't know all the details behind it, but I would agree with that, with what Sean and Alicia actually said. So,
Brent.
Wow, it's a big topic. I will say this, I liked what Jim said about the historical value of the buildings. And I think that there is a lot of potential for this park, for Waterboard Park. And I think that's probably why there's such a big push. However, having said that, I think Sean was spot on. I'm not seeing a real rush for this. I feel a rush to get this in and get this done and get this vote could have negative repercussions down the road. That's all I have.
Okay, and I'm losing track. Troy.
Yeah, pardon me. I'm gonna be a little bit more lengthy than you probably want. I did have my hand up, but I know it's tough to see. I feel a lot like what Sean had said. I agree. I don't like being bullied, and we're being bullied tonight by some of the public comments. I'm gonna call I'm gonna call some things on the table here. This was not a done deal 2 years ago. We did not change our mind because it is unfair and inaccurate to say the board decided, because we are not the board. We are 9 individuals. And my opinion has not changed in 2 years. I am 100% against making this a charter park tonight for the same reasons that have been stated. There is no urgency for this. In fact, I think we would be doing our citizens a disservice to make this a charter park tonight. Or anytime real soon. Sean made some very good points. We make this a charter park and we can't undo this. We have to sell off a piece of land, a little, even if it's a sliver, for a road. Laura made a comment, even a sewer line. We want to put a storage facility on it, a shed, anything of that nature that's not parks related. We got to put this in front of the people and try doing that when the opposition launches a campaign that says the city of Oregon City wants to sell a park. Like, that's going to blow up, and it's not going to go anywhere, even if the piece that we have to sell is a 10 by 10 foot piece, just for a little bit of a road or a irrigation ditch or a sewer line. It's just not going to fly. And that's what's going to happen if it becomes a charter. If we leave it alone, to Sean's point, this can be a park. It can be a park without being a charter. It just doesn't have the same protections, and the city can have control. Kendall's correct. We don't need the budget for this thing. We can, once it becomes a charter park, potentially it could be in our budget, and we can leave it as it is. Sean's correct as well. When you say we make this a charter park and it sits exactly as it is right now, looks the same, with no change at all in visual appearance for 30 years. And what benefit have we done? In addition, we've got underserved parts of our communities that that need parks. And so if we're going to develop a piece, we should be developing parks in other areas. So we make this a charter tonight, and then we go develop other parts of our community over the next 15, 20, 30 years. And what have we done? Absolutely nothing. And so what we really have here is a McLaughlin community. And in full disclosure, I'm a member of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, but we have a neighborhood association that wants to push this for a charter park, and there's absolutely no urgency. We can make this a charter park whenever we need to. We don't need to do it tonight, and this was never a done deal. We are all 9 individuals. We can change our mind. I have never changed my mind, and I will vote no to make this a charter park. And I urge my comrades to absolutely do the same thing tonight with me.
Okay, any other speakers? Doug?
Yeah. We've gone through this twice. We've had 2 votes on it. How you want to do it, I don't know. You want to reject our votes. The point is, we don't make the decisions anyway. The city commission does so. You had public comment. I don't see it as bullying. Troy, you voted no twice, and the majority voted yes. I don't know what kind of motion is going to be forward. If you want to take the motion that was put forward a motion and say that motion is null and void, I'll vote against it. I don't know how the others are going to vote. Sewer lines going through the upper yard, that's all basalt. that'd be a very expensive thing, and I don't even know who they'd be serving. A road that serves the park itself, it could be built. It could be a park pathway or whatever. I just don't see the arguments. I'm for it being a park, and maybe the opinions have changed. You can put another vote forward, a motion forward to cancel the previous votes if you wish, but we'll just see how it goes. I don't know how you're going to do the motion.
Okay, so I'm going to summarize here. Our current staff report includes concerns. The site should undergo environmental remediation prior to designation as a charter park. All cleanup of the site should be done before designation as a charter park. And 2, all buildings and structures should be removed from the site prior to designation as a charter park. We need a motion. Do we accept what is known as the upper yard as a charter park? Or do we include tonight's notes as well as the concerns?
Karen, I'd like to make a motion at this time. Can I do that?
Sorry, name.
Sorry, Troy Bollinger. Can I make a motion right now?
You may.
I'd like to make a motion that PrAC does not support making Upper Waterboard Park a charter park at this time.
Upper yard?
The upper yard of, well, any part of Lower Waterboard Park, a charter park at this time.
Part of Waterboard Park actually is part of the 1970 vote, but it's from behind the armory up the hill. So this would be what we know as the upper yard.
Fair enough. I'll amend it to accept that.
And Sean Datchler, I'll second that.
Okay, roll call.
Troy Bollinger,
Aye.
Derek Kogel,
No.
Alicia Hannick,
Aye.
Sean Datchler,
Aye.
Andy Crum,
Aye.
Brent Haverkamp,
Aye.
Doug Neely,
No.
Karen Maury,
Abstain.
what was your vote again, Karen? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Abstain, I'm sorry.
Abstain, okay.
All right, so that will be what PrAC forwards to the City Commission, which honestly has moved ahead on this issue without ever asking us for our input. And we'll see what the future brings. Thank you, everyone. All right, so now, member reports. Anybody have a member report? Sorry, I lost my meeting. Okay, member reports. Anybody? Okay, not seeing anybody else, not hearing anything else. FYI, my son loves Monster energy drinks. And we got a set of bags from the Oregon Parks Foundation, the Oregon City Parks Foundation. And we are turning in huge bags full of his returnables. Get a hold of me if you want blue bags pre-marked with labels to help fund the Oregon City Parks Foundation. They are used to actually Oregon City Subaru is the only place they're getting bags from anymore. They used to get them from the library and whatever. And also the Oregon City Cemetery received a grant to move over to a new computer program that they are moving to that will give us much better information on the cemetery. And anybody else, and thank you, Denise, so much, and Jonathan, for the update on parks information. I know parks are not, and Rochelle, sorry, I forgot you. There's not a lot going on in the parks, but staff is doing an incredible job trying to continue to engage with the community. Anybody else? With a member report.
A question, how do we get a hold of you for the bags?
It's through Dee Dee, but I have more than I need. So you or Beth call me and I'll hand them to you on my porch. 6 foot distancing.
Okay. I don't know where you live, but that's okay.
Yeah, Dee Dee gave me more than we really need, but we're helping them, and they are certainly helping the parks. Anyone else?
Karen, I have a quick question. I'm sorry. How are these bags helping the Oregon City Parks Foundation? I don't understand
I'm sorry.
what the program is.
Name?
Brent.
Thank you, dear. Every returnable can, bottle, whatever that goes into the Oregon City Bottle Drop goes into the account for the Oregon City Parks Foundation.
Okay.
They have done the native plantings along the promenade, given grants to other groups, and are working with us on, if you need, they are a 501c3. And so when I'm working on stuff at the cemetery, we can direct donations through them for things that we need done at the cemetery.
I'm happy to help with that too. I'd love to get a bag.
1208 Lynn Avenue, M5.
Well, go ahead and
late afternoon.
Address
What?
again, please.
Sorry, Doug, what?
Your address again.
1208 Lynn Avenue,
Okay.
number M5. But don't bother me before 4 p.m.
Okay.
Hey, I'm old, I'm retired, I'm in COVID.
Fair.
And you can email me at karin.morey@gmail.com. Okay, anybody else? Now, we have extra staff on tonight. So Kathy, Rochelle, Jonathan, anybody have anything to add?
No, Rochelle has the news about the reopening of Ermitinger House and drive-in movies.
Loving the drive-in movies.
evening.
Rochelle, go.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Karen. This is Rochelle. But yeah, so we are going to do drive-in movies starting September 11th, 12th, and 19th. And the location will be the St. John's parking lot. And we're doing pre-registration for that event. And we're controlling it under all of the OHA guidelines. So it'll be a safe and family-friendly event. And yeah, so far on Facebook, it's been up for about 24 hours and we've had over 8,800 reaches and 2,000 people engaged. So I think there'll be some exciting, it's exciting that people will be able to offer something to the public. So we haven't been able to do that this summer. The next thing, we are reopening the Ermatinger House September 5th. And we're hoping to start tours back up again. Again, we're going to do pre-registration for that. Families can call in ahead of time. We'll give a tour. The parties need to be less than 10 and from the same household. And that'll also be the first stop for the pop exhibit. So, which is the Preserve Our Past Art and Poetry contest. So that will be, people can come in and check out the pop exhibit. And we are putting out a survey that started this week, actually, assessing the needs of the community for camp services come fall and winter. So we'll use that information to see how we can help and provide services during this unprecedented time during COVID. So thank you very much.
Okay, and I have got to say, I had asked for an updated staff report. COVID-19 has so changed everything. Kathy and your staff, thank you so much for Meals on Wheels. Rochelle, thank you so much for accepting donations and programs in the parks. And so far as I know, everything has been distanced, safe, but tried to keep us going.
I just want to say to the PrAC, thank you so much for volunteering for this really important board. We count on you. We appreciate you. I had to let 150 volunteers go at the Pioneer Center because they are mostly older people, which are vulnerable to this disease, serving very vulnerable homebound seniors. So we're trying to be mindful of those things. And in a pandemic of this nature, which is a highly contagious disease that is not friendly to elderly people, it's been a big lift. So any volunteers that keep giving of their time in this type of climate is, it speaks to your character and your kindness and your love for parks. So I just want to thank you all for doing this and continuing to do it. It's a great thing for us and it keeps us going. So thank you very much.
Thank you, my dear bud Kathy. All right, Kendall, any closing?
One other thing, just like to thank Denise. She is a rock star, having 2 construction projects going on at the same time with TSW and the start of DC Lorette this week. So just want to thank her for all the work that she's doing, and just want to tell her how much I appreciate all of that work. She's doing an outstanding job. So kudos to you, Denise.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Okay, I'm going to give a thank you closing. Denise, you have been my rock star forever. And thank you, Dawn, for the interim. And Kendall, you are so welcome.
Yes.
Let us help you come on board with this bunch. Anybody else comment?
Karen, this is Troy. Can I ask a question before we leave?
Yes, you may.
Rochelle, on the movies, I saw the post on Facebook and I saw some comments. People were very excited about it. And they said things like, hey, looks like it's a replacement for the free summer movies, which this now has a cost. So just to help me out, I'm sure there's a reason for the cost. It's got to cover some things that probably weren't there for the summer. So can you kind of shed some light on the reason for the cost that might help us understand?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Troy. There's some additional costs that come along with the drive-in movie. The licensing fees are different, for one. And 2, we're adding additional staff and we're bringing in some security and different things. And we've got some sponsors on board that are helping offset that cost. But we're still ultimately, even with charging a fee, we're still losing a little bit of money putting this event on for the community. So we're doing it in a way that we can hopefully provide a service, but then also make sure that we're being responsible fiscally too. So there'll be bingo prior to the start of the movie. And so it'll be in-car bingo, and we've got some prizes that have been donated. So Subaru, for example, provided an all-wheel drive alignment for free, which is a value of $150. There'll be some prize corn maze family certificates. And so we're adding value to it. And additionally too, if somebody comes in and they pay the $45, they're getting a free pop and popcorn. So we're increasing the value for the price, and then the cost of contracting with Party Factory too is the other.
I mean, what's the limit that'll fit in the parking lot there?
So we're allowing 40 cars.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions for anybody?
May I?
Yes, Doug.
We have our future agenda items. We have never heard what comprises that over $25 million parks request. We found out initially it was said that it was deferred maintenance and staff. That wasn't the case, it's projects. I would like to know what goes into that. We have to work with the next city commission to identify mechanisms for park funding, but we have to know what that is, and we were never told what that was. We went into that joint meeting between the city commission and the Parks and Recreation. That value was put up there, and we had no idea where that value came from. So I'd like to request that we see that, so the next time we have a discussion with the city commission on terms of future revenue sources for Parks and Recreation, we know what's being presented.
Okay, Doug, I'm going to give you a thank you. Sean and I have let Kendall know that the deferred maintenance needs to be reviewed based on actual costs. And that is something that we want to work on as we move forward. Kendall?
And so I just wanted to let you know that that's a priority of mine. I am working on doing a reassessment of those numbers to actually reach out and see if we can look at hiring some professional help to shore up some of those numbers to make sure that we have accurate information. And then once I have that information, I will be sharing that with PRAC.
Thank you.
Okay, are we all good? Not seeing anybody else with a hand up. Thank you, everybody, for a wonderful Zoom meeting. See you next month.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
All right.